My mother asked me to say a few words about my dad, and I would like to focus on what many of us remember about him. He was funny. He was quirky. I think some people think that Sean and I may have inherited a tiny bit of that quirky. A little bit. But I'm thinking about him as that now. It's not the brilliance, but just how funny he was and how quirky. And I'm imagine with me that if you're feeling sad later, for those of you who knew him well, if you go home tonight and you're sitting alone in the dark, maybe watching a little TV, get your mind off, like maybe tonight, tomorrow, and you're sitting there and you hear something, you go, what's that? And you get up and you go into the kitchen and the blinds are blowing a little bit and you see that the window is a crack and say, oh, I don't remember leaving that window open. So you go and close it and think, that's odd. You go back into the living room and in the other chair is my father sitting there, come back from the dead. And he's sitting there and he's watching TV. And you would normally be shocked a little bit, but he seems so peaceful and he's beautiful and he's young and perfect, and so you sit down and you're looking at him and you're feeling like very excited and you want to say, well, what's it like? It seems like such a profound moment that he's back there to talk to you, and he looks over you and with a very serious look on his face, but peaceful, he asks, do you like SpongeBob SquarePants? And you look down and you think, what? And then you look up and he's gone. That was my father. And that was the way that he could just comfort you in a certain situation with just like the most bizarre things. And any of us who knew him have had those moments where he would just say something that was like, what? and then you, for the rest of your life, you think back and you burst out laughing every time you think of it. So anyway, I wrote down a couple of, I didn't prepare like a speech, but I wrote down a couple of things that some of you may not know about him. The first thing I wrote down is that I'm a skeptic about such things. However, if anybody had ESP, there certainly were some really strange things that happened with my dad. And I don't know if I'm remembering it perfectly, but when I was very young, I must have been, I don't know, my mother could say, I don't know, around 5 years old. We were driving down this highway, a divided highway, and we passed an Esso on the other side of the highway. Now they're called Exxon, back then they were Esso. And they had a big sign up saying contest for this state-of-the-art color TV stereo. And my dad was driving and he said, I'm going to win that TV. And he went up to the next light, made a U-turn, went back, went in, and entered the contest. We won that TV. And that was the time, you know, we were very young. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and I remember.
Put a tiger in your tank. That's what he came up with. He came up with that slogan.
Get my father?
That's how he won it, right? That was
yes, I don't know.
Yeah. He came up with the slogan, put a tiger in your tank, and he won that color TV.
But the thing that was so funny about it was...
about 99.9% sure.
I didn't know that. But what was really funny about it is my parents didn't have a lot of money at that time, and they were living almost like college students, very little furniture, you know, just sparse. A mattress on the floor. And then in the middle of it all was this state-of-the-art color TV stereo console, which we all grew up with together. I don't remember what it was, but it was state-of-the-art. It was RCA, I think. I don't know. But even better than that, when my wife Cindy was pregnant for the second time, went in for an ultrasound up in Massachusetts, and you know, lo and behold, there were 3 of them in there. So I called up my parents' house. My dad picks up. I said, "Hey, Dad, guess what?" He goes, "Cindy's having triplets."
Yeah. And he didn't know she was pregnant either.
No, I'm not kidding. It's like I have no explanation for that. I would also like to just say a couple of things about what it was like growing up with this guy as a kid. When I was in 6th grade, they had a project where they put a timeline around the room, you know, 6th grade, you know, what are you, 12? It's elementary school. And we all were supposed to bring in some pictures to put up on the timeline. And, you know, most kids brought in like standard elementary school style pictures. You know, picture of George watching, picture of Lincoln, you know. Some were sort of Disney-ish, all like the stuff you'd see, very conservative, very nice in an elementary school. I go home, I asked my dad, Dad, I need a picture to hang up on the timeline. He said, oh, I'll draw you one. Now, so what topic does he pick? Well, how about World War I? How about trench warfare? How about hand-to-hand combat during a mustard gas attack? So he drew this, and he had it all colored in. So he had this British soldier and this German soldier fighting with knives. He had gas masks colored in like this yellow mustard gas around him. And the British soldier had cut the hose to the other guy's gas mask. And I guess inhaling mustard gas is a rather nasty experience because he had all colored in. You could see in the guy's through like the goggles, you could see that his gas mask was filling up with this liquid that looked like, you know, a mixture of vomit and blood, and you know. So here I go skipping into class, my little picture, you know. I can't even imagine what the teacher thought. Hung it up on the timeline. That same year, this will be a little. No, I wish we did have it.
Hanging in a museum.
That same year, and this is a different another way of the kind of parent he was. There was a contest to write about the Pledge of Allegiance, and it was like a local paper. It said, you know, in all the schools, you know, for each grade, and for the 6th graders, it was write about why you want to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And so I went home and said, Dad, why do we say the Pledge of Allegiance? You know, why is this a good thing? Well, he didn't think it was a good thing. He thought it was a horrible thing. So he went through all these reasons about why saying the Pledge of Allegiance was so terrible. It was just like rah-rah nationalism, and that really it should just be a one-time event in your life, and, you know, and that it should be solemn, you should study for it, and all this stuff. He gave all these reasons about why it was such a stupid thing that Americans do. And I was writing all this down, you know. I went back to my bedroom and I thought, I'm never going to win the contest. This line of reasoning. So what I did was, with my little 6th grade brain, I went through everything he said, and I came up with an argument, a counter-argument. So I wrote my essay counter-arguing everything he said, and I turned that in, and I won. So I, you know, got published in the paper, came home with the paper, showed it to my mom, you know, I was very proud, and when my dad came home, she showed it to him. I was a little nervous about that. And, you know, he's reading it, and he smiles, he looks at me, goes, you wrote exactly the opposite of everything I said. I said, Dad, come on, you know, So, I'll tell you one other thing about what kind of parent he was. I remember one time when I was 16, I was very agitated about something. I was feeling like we were arguing. I think he had denied me some privilege or something, or someplace I wanted to go, he said no, or something like that. And, you know, like the way teenagers are, I was feeling like, oh my God, I was like so upset, you know, and I was really angry. I was not disrespectful to my dad usually, but I remember feeling really passionate, like, Dad, you got to understand the world will end if you don't change your mind. And so he's like listening and whatnot, and he reaches into his wallet. He takes out $2 bills, and I'm talking earnestly, trying to, you know, please, you know, this is why, you know, and he's rolling up these $2 bills, and he's looking at me, listening. He takes the $2 bills, and he sticks them in his nose. And they're just like sticking, these $2 bills are sticking out, and he keeps got this like total straight face, listening to me, this $2 bill sticking out of his nose. And you know, I'm mad. But it's hard to stay mad when you're talking to somebody who's got $2 bills sticking out. So I mean, that's really the kind of guy he was. And I think that if you're thinking about him and if you're feeling sad, I think try to imagine him coming back to you as a ghost to comfort you with $2 bills sticking out of his nose. And I'm hoping that will make you feel a little better about it.
I just want to say something.